طيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Good evening everyone. Welcome to today's live webinar talking about the strategy execution blueprint. To be honest, we are very thrilled to have each of you today here, whether you are a business leader, a strategist, operation professional, or even though a continuous improvement champion, you are in the right place. So my name is Hamza Rai. I'm the Academy Director at ES Learning. And with me in the call also Push Arora, the founder and also the CEO of Hoshin Academy. Why this session matters and what we are going to cover today in this webinar, it will be all shared with today's trainer, Push Arora. Push is one of the region's leading experts in strategy and organizational transformation. He has been in the market for more than 15 years. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Push Aurora to lead us into the strategy execution blueprint. Aurora, the floor is yours, and then we are very happy to be part of this session until the end. So good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Hamza, and good evening, everybody. It's my great pleasure to bring to you today a fantastic webinar on the strategy execution blueprint. Specifically, how is it that you align strategy, operations, and continuous improvement? I'm going to try to do the content in around 1 hour's time, and we'll leave some extra space at the end for some questions. And so if I'm going a little bit quick, it's because I want to maintain the momentum. By all means, you can certainly use the chat if you have any specific questions, or we can leave those, of course, till the end. And I hope you enjoy this session. And first thing I will do is I would start off with introducing you a little bit and telling you a little bit more about myself. So my name is Push Barora. I am based out of Toronto, Canada, and I have 25 plus years experience in a variety of fields, from process improvement, engineering, operations, transformation, and of course, strategy across a multiple of different sectors. I will tell you that in my career, I have gone from being junior in my role and learning different parts of the business. And at the end of it all, what I've come to the conclusion is that strategy is very, very important in terms of how we aim and align operations and improvements to the heart of the organization. And so I've had a variety of different roles throughout my career, as you can see on the slide. I bring at least 20 years experience in strategy and specifically how you align teams and drive execution. And it's a specific challenge that all organizations face, whether you're small or large, or regardless, of what industry you reside in. The things that I'm going to talk to you about, specifically for organizations that have operations-based focus as well, is how do you overcome some of those challenges to drive strategy execution. So I'll move quickly and get right into the main topics. What we're going to cover today is we're going to talk first about why is it that strategic initiatives fail. And then I'm going to move into talking to you about the executive leadership dilemma. Specifically, what is the big challenge that all senior leaders face and what they need to do to overcome them. This is very important as it sets the stage into how you actually can drive progress and action at every level of the organization. How do we get away from removing conflicting priorities? As we all know, in an organization, all the functional heads have their own list of priorities. But if you add all of these up, it'll count to a very high number of initiatives, maybe 50, maybe 70, maybe more. But the organization only has the capacity to do perhaps 20 or 30, as an example. So how do we remove those conflicting priorities? How do we get everyone aligned on the work that matters most? And as I mentioned, how do you aim your improvements to the heart of the organization? And so what we'll also move into, as I'll describe to you, is how is it that some of the world's best companies overcome these challenges and how they execute strategy. And then we'll talk to you a little bit more of how you can learn more about the frameworks and the tools that I'm going to teach you. So with that, let's get right into it. As I mentioned, I'm going to try to go quickly. And I want to first open up with this quote here, and it is so true. Innovation is rewarded, but execution is worshipped. Meaning we can have all the ideas in the world to do all the great things that we want, but at the end of the day, the companies and institutions that succeed are the ones that have the ability to execute on those. And so if you even look at senior leaders and executives, the ones that remain in the roles are the ones that know how to execute. And so execution is worshipped, which is why this is exactly what we're focused on talking about today with you all. So first, I'd like to pose a question to you, and please use the chat here. The first question I have is, what percentage of strategic initiatives fail? So please, put in the percentage that you think. And when I talk about this, I'm saying, what percentage of strategic initiatives fail to deliver in the intended scope, within the timelines, and within the specific cost that was originally agreed upon? What would you think that number is? Is it 50%? Is it 20%? Is it 70? Is it 90? Or even more? So I'm looking in the chat. Thank you, Aslam. I see 70%, Hamza 60%. We have more on 70 to 80, 95%, 70, 80, 90, 60, 20, 60. So there's a vast array of different responses we're getting. I'm going to give it a moment to allow you a little bit more time. But as you can see in the chat as well, that a lot of you are saying 60 to 80%. There's some of you that are saying less. And of course, this all depends on the institution or the organization that you are within. But I'm talking about generally across all types of businesses, all types of industries. When you do the studies, what does that number look like? So we have a nice array of different, and a lot of people are also, I think, saying 70%. So let's get into it. The folks that are saying that it's 70% or more, generally, you're correct. And it turns out that many companies, they are able to craft the good strategies, but few of them execute well. And I'll just give you some specific studies here that you can see and I've highlighted for you, that it shows you time and time again, organizations, big and small, they actually do fail to deliver on what they desire to accomplish in the appropriate scope, budget, and schedule that was intended. And the facts and the data point to poor execution, or as you heard of probably, is the execution gap. The stats here are essentially timeless and outstanding. And while I don't know if there's a definitive percentage that applies universally, I know in organizational change management, they'd like to say 70% of changes fail due to poor change management. But what you can see is a variety of different studies here, ranging from 70% to 90%. And it's interesting, the bottom right quotation there is by the creators of the balanced scorecard system, which I know is widely popular. And even those, David Norton is also saying that 90% of organizations fail to execute their strategy. And while a tool like business balanced scorecard is really powerful for performance management at the corporate level, it isn't necessarily the right tool to help you drive execution on strategic initiatives. And many of the clients that come to us come with this common complaint, and we show them how you can use different tools and frameworks to complement balanced scorecard. So again, as I mentioned, while there's no definitive percentage, several studies suggest that a significant percentage of strategic initiatives, over 70% in fact, will fail to achieve their intended objectives. So with that, I'm going to move along and we're going to talk about, okay, so if majority of strategic initiatives fail, what is happening? Why is this happening? What is causing it? And even that, there's a wide array of different things dependent upon the specific situation within an organization. Here's a list of the top 20 reasons. Now, this is a book on the Strategy Handbook. It's a really good book on the top 20 reasons why strategy execution fails. And in this book, the author made an inventory of the most important problems that an organization experiences when they execute their strategy. And it turns out that this list of problems is surprisingly stable over time. And over the past 30 years or so, based on the studies done, they boil down to the following list of 20. And if you could please also take the opportunity in the chat, maybe there are certain ones here that resonate more with you. Please use the chat. Let everyone know what are some of the different reasons that you see within your teams or within your organization that are causing strategy execution to fail. It might be unclear communication. It might be siloed behaviors. It could be not having a clear strategy or priorities. what number, if we could just look in the chat, do you find are some of the biggest reasons that may show up in your organization or institution on why strategy fails? We'd love to see what different people's feedback is there. So as you're doing that, I'm going to quickly move along. And so every organization will face certain challenges. They may have issues like some of these within their list. And of this list of 20, there may be a list of 2 or 3, 4 or 5, maybe more that really rise to the top. And this is something that we're trying to overcome. So as you can see, it's a very complex problem. There are many things. Thank you, Hisham. You've listed at least a variety of numbers there, number 4, 5, 6, 11, 12, 15, 20. It's a very complex situation. And that's why over the past 30 years and more, we're seeing that more than 70% of strategic initiatives fail. So I'm going to now move on and I want to tell you what is happening. What is happening, first of all, is that strategy execution, it's a process. And that is very critical to first understand. And if you recognize that anytime you have processes, if you have an inconsistent process, that will lead to inconsistent results. If you have consistent processes, that will result in desired results. And so as we're always looking to improve processes within our teams and within our organizations, we know consistent processes will give you the desired results. It especially applies also to strategy execution. And the thing is, many organizations may not have any process. If they do, it's not an adequate process or system to drive strategy execution. And what I'm going to teach you in the next within the next hour is exactly how you can build and implement a framework and a system to overcome this. And in fact, it is one of the world's best companies using this framework that you're going to learn today. And what these tools and frameworks are designed to do is essentially this. This is the secret formula that we're trying to go after, which is, I like to refer to them as the 4 R's. First of all, we need to identify what are the right business objectives or opportunities within the organization. Once we do that, we need to identify the right high-performing people to be dedicated on those initiatives. You need to then thirdly give them the right tools and support to drive project success. And if you do all of that, they will deliver for you the right results. Now, again, it's very simple to say this, but it is very difficult to do because there are multiple priorities and initiatives. There are many things that people have to manage strategically. And then there's also managing daily operations, admin, emails, different teams. We're structured vertically within organizations by departments and functions. And that's fine because it is the best way to foster knowledge and channel careers, whether you're in a finance or HR or technology or operations or risk management or whichever. We are structured vertically within organizations. However, value flows horizontally across the organization. And so it becomes tricky to orient ourselves to focus on what the right business objectives are and get everyone aligned on that. And so we need to have systems and frameworks to do that to enable this success formula because it does not happen automatically. So having said that, I'm going to move along and I want to move into now, as I talked earlier about, we want to talk about what is the challenge that executives and senior leaders are facing. In other words, what is the executive leader dilemma? And when we share this to executives and leaders, they look at theirs, their eyes go big and they nod their heads because this is exactly what they're feeling. Now, I've shortened this section to be fit within our webinar, but we have a more expansive perspective on what is the executive leadership dilemma and how to unlock it. But I want to give you a bit of a taste of what it is. And the first thing I want to do is I want to ask a question to you. What do you think, and please use the chat here, what do you think is the ultimate goal for businesses and institutions? And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. Please use the chat. If you sit back and think, regardless of industry, regardless of niche, regardless of the size of the business, what do you believe is the ultimate goal for an organization? And you might start to think, okay, well, maybe it is profitability. Maybe it is to drive top line revenue. Could it be around improving customer experience? Could it be about making an impact? Could it be about helping the community? Could it be about driving, thank you, Abdullah, higher return on investment? I see sustainability, commitment to excellence, driving excellence and continuous improvement, growth. There's a variety of different things. And again, I don't think any of these are wrong answers, but I want to take it even a step higher for us in a moment here. The ultimate goal for organizations, if you think about it, is to be able to create a sustainable competitive advantage. And all of the other things that we've talked about earlier, growth, revenue, profitability, sustainability, customers, excellence, et cetera, all of those are again designed for us to make sure that we are relevant and we are able to sustain the competitive advantage over disruptors, over competition, and other changes that happen within our environment. Take it from me. I am someone who actually used to work at BlackBerry many, many years ago. And when I started working at BlackBerry or Research in Motion, I believe many of you would know that company. It was the coolest company in the world. I thought that I was going to retire there. And this was around 2006. We had one factory. We expanded globally to 13 factories. Everybody wanted this product, movie stars, celebrities, government, and so forth. But you all know the story. It didn't last. It wasn't sustainable. And we're littered with different types of organizations and technologies that were not able to stand the test of time. Some, however, have, but not all do. And at the end of the day, if you look at your organization and where you sit, you are also facing this challenge of sustainable competitive advantage. How do you do that? Whether it be you're looking at a 1 to 3 year horizon, 10 to 20 years, or even beyond. And what we need to do with executive leaders, they need to basically understand that there's two different things happening. We all create a vision within an organization, a very aspirational ambition, and the path to get there needs to reside on basically the progress from daily operations and continuous improvement is good, but it is not enough. You need to implement new ideas, goals, and activities. And the trajectory that you need, that red line that you're seeing, that's the trajectory you need in terms of achievement over time to get to your company vision faster than the competition. And so I'm introducing now these two terms that are going to come up again and again in the rest of the webinar. Again, one is managing the daily operations of the business, and the other one is focusing on new goals and activities. And we have to do this in parallel. The challenge, again, what comes up here, though, is we lack an effective process for ensuring that the strategic goals and objectives of a particular organization will drive progress and action at every level of the organization. And this is what we are trying to overcome. Okay? Because at the end of the day, leaders and teams, they face conflicting priorities. How many of you, even as an example, have enough time to get everything done in a day that you want to accomplish, or a week, or a month? And if not, what usually gets compromised? Is it the important items, or is it the urgent items? And we talk about the urgent items, that's the whirlwind of the day job. Keeping up with emails is even a full job in itself. It's the meetings, it's the reports, the presentations, reviews, more meetings. You'll always have this type of a discretionary work, which also is combined with escalations. And that's, keeping the lights on, we call it, in terms of the day-to-day. And that is delivering on the mission for your customers, on getting them what they need, when they want, how they want, in a particular time horizon. But then there's other important things that we need to focus on as well. And how do we elevate the focus there on the new goals and the new ideas and activities that are going to help us to get closer to the vision? And the thing is, we end up with conflicting priorities of urgent versus important, which is the whirlwind of the day job versus the goals of the new activities. And in other words, as well, is working in the business, which is the left side of this diagram, and working on the business, which is the right-hand side of this diagram. And the thing is, nobody has infinite time, energy, and resources, and we're always at a challenge to try to juggle and manage these two things. So how do you start to overcome this? Because this starts from the top of the organization as well. Well, one key is that executives and senior leaders, they really need to make hard choices. And what we mean that is that teams and leaders have a tendency to add more and more and more without the consideration of what will actually get past the finish line. Meaning the more ideas that you have, i.e., the more objectives that you add at the top level, the higher ratio of programs and activities you will end up with for a limited set of time, resources, energy, money, etc. And what that results is in less focus, more competing initiatives, fewer goals, making it very difficult to make things to successful completion. So if you select the vital few, which is what are the actual critical breakthrough objectives that we need in the business? Where do we specifically need breakthrough? That will translate into a variety of number of different programs and initiatives, depending on the size of your organization or institution. And if you keep it to the vital few versus the trivial many, where we like to add more and more and more, your success for your likelihood for success is much, much higher. And so what we need to do is resist this temptation to add more and more and more through merciless deselection. And this is very, very hard to do. Now, if you think about it, my comment earlier on balanced scorecard. In balanced scorecard, as an example, we try to impose a balanced perspective across the business: customer, financial, operational efficiency, and people. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's absolutely good to have good control on what are we doing across those balanced dimensions. But let me ask you, do you necessarily need breakthrough or step improvement in all four of these categories? Perhaps you really only need it in one or two, maybe three. And that's the distinction that we make in the framework that we're going to teach you is just because everything is important, it doesn't mean you should treat them all in the same way. Certain, again, 80-20 principle, the principle that says 80% of all your outcomes are derived from 20% of the causes. We really try to want to make sure that executives and leaders are focused in on the vital few and identifying what those top level breakthrough areas are versus the trivial many. And we're not saying ignore the trivial many. We still have systems and frameworks to ensure that we drive stability and control in those, but we really get hyper-focused on where we need specific breakthroughs. And if you take this a little further, when you think about it, because we have problems and opportunities that need to be resolved everywhere. What you see is there are usually very, very few major problems or opportunities. Those are the big rocks. They require focused innovation or re-engineering. Then we have several mid-sized opportunities and problems across the organization. Perhaps we require structured project management or continuous improvement or different other types of things like Lean or Six Sigma or other frameworks. And then, of course, we have many, many, many small problems in an organization. And those are the daily issues that take energy, things that we need to do that require daily problem solving. And if we're progressive about it, what are we doing to prevent reoccurrence? In other words, how are we installing smoke detectors versus just putting out the fires? And since there's so many different, we'll call them rocks that need to be moved within the organization, what leaders are challenged with is how do you connect the linkage of which ones will give you the most likelihood of success? And so when you connect those dots by using certain strategies and frameworks that we're going to discuss in this webinar coming up, you're able to set clear priorities and objectives to ensure alignment with the overall organizational goals. You're able to allocate resources and attention proportionally on the importance of each rock. You're able to develop strategy and action plans to tackle the big rocks while also addressing the medium and smaller sized rocks concurrently. And you're able to monitor progress and adjust on the priorities based on what the organization needs while celebrating successes along the way. And so there is this balance of small, medium, large rocks, as well as focusing on the daily operations and the new goals and the new ideas and then the innovation of today. This is what companies are struggling to balance. In other words, how do you improve today to fuel tomorrow? So yes, you have to focus on daily operations, drive out waste, reduce defects, errors, etc. And when you improve today, that creates white space. It creates capacity. It frees up money for investments that now you can reinvest into strategic focus, where you have now more capital, more freed up time, energy, and resources to fuel tomorrow to work on the new goals and ideas and achieve new innovative strategies. And so when we look at strategy and execution, it is not independent of focusing on operations. What we actually like to say is that strategy sets the direction, but it's in fact operations that makes it a reality. And the diagram here shows exactly how that is the case. Again, if you're caught up in daily operations, putting out fires, and you have lots of wasteful processes, non-value added activities, and so forth, you're burning money, you're burning time, and you are burning energy. However, if you have an efficient and effective operations, then you will actually be able to feed and focusing onto the new ideas. Okay. And so what takes me now to is a summary of all of that, which basically says good strategy isn't good enough. And the most successful companies, they employ systems to align and improve both strategy and operations. You can see from the diagram, strategy is about doing the right things. Operations is about doing things right. And if you have an ineffective strategy and inefficient operations, well, naturally, you will die quickly. That's the bottom right quadrant. You will have poor operations, poor strategy execution, you will not survive. But suppose you have, one or the other. You have either good strategy, but not good operations, or vice versa. You have good operations, but not a great strategy execution system. You will still only survive, but for a limited amount of time, and you will die a slow death as an organization. What you really need in order to thrive is have good strategy execution and good operations. And what we're really trying to do is build in frameworks and systems to allow teams and organizations to be able to do this, because this does not come naturally. Otherwise, you're back to the rocks analogy. There's rocks everywhere that need to be moved. Our functional teams are all doing their best to move and different types of rocks, different sizes and different styles, but we're not operating in a coordinated fashion where we connect the dots and all focus our energies on the work that matters most. And so even in here, you don't even need a brilliant strategy. You don't need flawless execution. In fact, that doesn't exist. All you need is a good strategy coupled with good execution. And if you do that, that will yield superior results. And so what we're trying to do is teach you how to do that. But again, as I said, it doesn't happen naturally. You need a system. And if you look at this now, what approach do you think is better long term? You can achieve results, but it depends on how you achieve them. Is it through a repeatable process or is it not? Meaning, if you've achieved good results, strong results, but you don't have a repeatable process, chances are you got lucky. If you have a repeatable process, but you still aren't able to achieve the results, you need to refine that repeatable process, that system. Okay, you need improvement. Obviously, if you don't have a repeatable system to achieve results and you aren't achieving the results, then good luck. You're not hitting the results. But if you end up on the top right quadrant of this diagram where you're able to achieve results through repeatable processes and systems, you will succeed. And again, this goes beyond now having very, very great people. A bad system will beat a good person every single time. And since we have different types of people working within our teams, we require to give them the guardrails, a system, a process on how we can achieve the results. And that is exactly what we're going to talk more about. So now I want to move into the next section. And in the next section, I'm going to ask you a question here again. When you think about your organization or the division that you're in or the team, use what's appropriate. On a scale of 1 to 10, please in the chat, rank your what you believe is the, one being the lowest, 10 being the highest, is your organization's strategy, management, and execution process. Do you even have one? Maybe you don't. Is it repeatable? Is it producing the results? Think about what works well. Think about what doesn't work well. And if you had to rank it on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being we have a repeatable system that drives success on a regular basis, that would be the 10, right? What are the numbers that you think that you would have? So I'll pause for just a quick second here. I'm seeing some numbers are coming in. Hopefully you're all looking at the chat as well. I see some 5s, I see 7s, I see some 4s. I don't think we've seen an 8, 9, or a 10 yet. We haven't seen a 1, 2, or a 3. So what we're seeing basically is ranging numbers between 4 and 7. Okay. And I think that's pretty common. After I teach you more about processes of how you can fix this, I'm going to ask you the exact same question again based on the newfound knowledge that you have. Okay. So what I want to do now is I want to introduce you to a framework that can be used to overcome many, many of these challenges. And I'm going to move into that section now, which is how some of the world's best companies execute strategy. And I want to introduce this concept to you called Hoshin Kanri. I know it's a unique name. It's a Japanese phrase, and I'll give you a little bit of the history. But Hoshin Kanri, in essence, is a strategy deployment and execution framework. And I will show you as well which companies use this framework. And you will be surprised to see many organizations and institutions that you're well familiar with that you never knew are using this framework in some shape or form within their organization. So the first thing is Hoshin Kanri. It's a strategic planning system. It originated post-war in Japan in the 1960s, and it got widespread adoption first in the US and then around the world. The methodology came out of, if you've heard of Lean and Six Sigma or Agile, it all rooted in the Lean movement that was quickly adopted by companies in Japan and around the world, including companies like Toyota, Hewlett Packard, Xerox, et cetera, to name a few. And the most sophisticated companies using Hoshin Kanri have built it into a full business system that encompasses Hoshin Kanri and continuous improvement principles to manage their business. And I will show you which companies have done this and the impact that they have had in creating a sustainable competitive advantage. So the first thing is, let's talk about what is this thing specifically. As I mentioned to you, in Japanese, also known as Hoshin Kanri, Hoshin Planning, it translates loosely into a shiny metal and a direction, or a compass. I also like the description of ship in storm moving in the right direction, which is certainly how it must feel sometimes in certain teams and organizations. But the specific definition of ho, meaning direction, shin is needle, again, that's how you get the compass, that's your strategy, right? And con is control and channeling, and re is reason. So management, really, you can loosely define that as. So you get Hoshin Kanri, which is loosely as a direction management or strategy management and deployment. This is essentially what Hoshin Kanri is. And as I mentioned, it has been around for a very, very long time, multiple decades. Many organizations use it, yet it is not widely known. And so if you have never heard of this framework before, I guarantee you, if you do search it onto the internet, you will find a wealth of information on this framework. However, I do caution you, there's a lot of misinformation on how you actually specifically do this. This is a framework not for, just early startups, entrepreneurial organizations that are really trying to test and deliver things very, very quickly. It's for well-established businesses that are trying to get to the next level and achieve breakthrough objectives. And again, I'll show you how this system now works and how it's so powerful. Okay. So what does Hoshin Kanri do? It has 4 main purposes. 1, it forces you to focus on the vital few versus the trivial many. It drives alignment of the entire organization towards those vital few breakthrough objectives. We build in an execution framework that allows you to manage non-execution and derive corrective action because it is rooted in lean principles of plan, do, check, act, and root cause problem solving. And it drives engagement with the entire organization because of the cross-functional planning approach that we take to achieve the objectives and to achieve the breakthroughs. And so this is a framework that says the strategy should never only be developed in the top ivory office. The initial direction certainly can be, but how do you break down the what into the how? That requires cooperation at different levels of the organization, and we need to be able to cascade priorities down. And it's a fundamental shift in thinking of how a lot of different organizations plan their strategy for the year or for the next 3 to 5 years, and how they translate into how they're going to actually get that done. So why we use Hoshin specifically and why it's unique, and I would say why it has an advantage over some of the other specific strategy frameworks, is that Hoshin specifically recognizes the conflicting priorities we've talked about earlier, which is the daily management or working in the business. We call those the business fundamentals, and the big breakthrough objectives, which are working on the business. And if you think about it yourself, they really are two different distinct types of work. And the higher up you go in an organization, the more time the senior people need to spend likely on the strategic items, whereas the rest of the organization may require to spend more time on, I like to call it keeping the lights on, which is running daily operations, which is the business fundamentals. And everybody in the organization, regardless of the rank or title, should be very, very focused on driving continuous improvement on a daily basis on whatever it is that they do. So what do I mean by breakthroughs? Breakthroughs are specific objectives that will give you step improvement. So they would be things like increase market share by 25% or improve delivery performance by 15%, reduce product costs by 15%, be number one in our industry within the region. Those are the types of breakthroughs that we're talking about here. Whereas in business fundamentals, those are other types of things like, routine work or improvement work. Maybe it's a supply chain planning process or team developer development or other types of things of that nature. There are things that we need to do on a daily basis, weekly basis to deliver value to our customers. Those are the business fundamentals. The new goals or stretch objectives that we create for ourselves to create a sustainable competitive advantage, those become the breakthroughs objectives. And when you look at these two, those are the two types of work that we're trying to solve for now, which are strategy execution while managing daily operations or daily management. Okay? So we need to drive between the distinction of these two types of work, and I will show you how this framework helps us to do that. The one other thing that I want to talk about Hoshin Kanri and why it's superior and unique from some other frameworks is that when you look at conventional planning spends most of its time on selection of the right areas to focus on, and very little on the deployment of those activities of how we're going to get the job done. So it's more on selection, little on deployment, and more on results, meaning let's chase the numbers. Whereas Hoshin Kanri looks at it very differently. And you will understand why as I get into the next few sections, which is they do, of course, spend time on selection, but it's really on deselection. And the majority of the time was on aggressive deployment and more on the process to get the results. Okay. And this is what we're trying to get away from is, again, most conventional planning approaches is this strategic decision-making style versus a deselection or a ruthless elimination of the trivial many to get to the vital few, and taking time to grasp the situation to understand how we deploy these objectives into specific priorities and tactics to ensure that we can get the result that we need. Sun Tzu, famous Chinese military strategist, best known for his work in the book The Art of War, said it best: strategy without tactics is the slowest route to victory. Tactics without strategy is noise before defeat. And so what we're trying to do here, of course, is we're trying to find a system that connects both, from the top level strategy to the front lines in terms of alignment on strategy, goals, objectives, etc. So Let's take a look at a typical strategy deployment process. And I want to talk to you a little bit about where most organizations fail. So here's an example of a typical strategy deployment process. If it starts with, of course, on the far left, reflection on how the year went, all right? And we prioritize the needs, and you go, and what you'll notice is there's a variety of steps that happen from what we refer to as macro, which is a 3 to 5 year horizon, macro planning of the vision and the mission and the long-term objectives. Most companies do a pretty decent job there. Then the annual, which is what do we need to do annually in deploying those objectives? Most organizations do a not so bad of a job there either. And then finally, we get into the micro, which is the weekly and the monthly activities that result into the execution. This is the area where majority of organizations start to fall apart, is how you take the annual objectives, deploy those down through the organization, implement plans, conduct regular reviews, and drive that execution engine. And this is what we're trying to solve for. This is exactly what we're trying to figure out is how do you get a better job of doing this? Now, what's interesting is many strategy frameworks, they don't really help you to achieve the focus on the micro. I'm not saying that they don't, they do, but it is an area where a lot of organizations and teams can get caught up. This is where Hoshin Kanri excels. Hoshin Kanri really starts where most other strategy planning processes end. And if I show you more about it, let's get into how. As I mentioned earlier, Hoshin is superior in developing and deploying priorities to each level of the organization. It's superior because it helps you to be able to translate the what or the strategic activities into the how. And you'll notice this nomenclature of 3 to 5 year plan, annual objectives, level 1 priorities, cascaded down to level 2, level 3, 4, maybe even 5 or more, down to the action plans. We call this the point of impact. And what we're really trying to do at the end of the day is create a system to drive progress and action at every level of the organization with specific reviews that translates the what into the how. So that's all great. How do you do it? What Hoshin is attempting to try to do is link strategy to tactics or action through a clear, visible cascade of the long-term goals linked to short-term targets. And so when you think about it, there's the vision at the top, and the executive leadership team are focused on there. And what they're taking from that 3 to 5 year horizon is what are the annual objectives? Based on that, we need to translate what are the level 1 priorities. Based on specific level 1 priorities of the organization, what are level 2s, and so on and so on. You can almost consider them as how are we going from objectives to goals, strategies, and actions. Now, what's interesting even here is the taxonomy or the language that I'm using with you of 3 to 5 years, annual objectives, level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4 priorities. That is the language we'd like to use in Hoshin Kanri, because as you may already know, the terms strategy or goals or objectives or initiatives or projects, those are used in a variety of different ways depending on the organization that you're in. Some call the top of the list the strategies, whereas some call them the goals, supported by strategies. Some call the top of the list objectives, while the next level down is the strategies, and goals are underneath with milestones. There is no standard verbiage that is used across the entire organization or even different organizations on this. And so what we're really trying to do is these are the priorities. And I see your question, what's the reference for these priority levels is, I'll show you in just a second as we get into it, to your question there, Abdulaziz, is that what we're basically saying is, if I just jump back even for a second here, we want to create language that makes it very clear for an organization is what are the 3 to 5 year plan? What are those objectives? What are the annual objectives to support that 3 to 5 year horizon? Meaning, what's the one step forward we're going to take this year to achieve the 3 or 5 year plan? And for each of these breakthrough objectives, these annual breakthrough objectives, they will be supported by certain key priorities. We like to call them priorities, level 1 priorities. For an example, for a breakthrough objectives, you may have 3 or 4 level 1 priorities. Each of those level 1 priorities may cascade further across the organization into multiple level 2 priorities, and on and on and on until you get down to the point of impact, which is where we need to write what we call the action plan to achieve those. So I'll take it a little bit further and I'll show you how this whole system works. For now, I want you to recognize that we're trying to create, again, this clear, visible cascade of long-term goals to short-term targets and actions at the point of impact to ensure everybody understands how the strategy connects from the what into the how. And what we're trying to also do here is do something which is unique. There's a process called catchball. Now, catchball, as you may imagine, is basically what it stands for. Imagine taking a ball and playing catch, in a field, tossing the ball back and forth, across the different team members in an organization, and the ball representing ideas. And what we're trying to do here is when the senior leadership establishes the vision and 3 to 5 year horizon objectives and annual plan, then it comes down to, well, they may suggest, here are the level 1 priorities, the top level, things that we believe you need to do to achieve the annual objectives. And they may even set targets, metrics on what we need to achieve. And of course, they do this in all teams and organizations at the very top. And what's unique now is, how do we get down to the level 2 priorities? That involves the next level down of the management to be able to understand what those targets are for level 1 improvement priorities that we may have, and assess what are the specific initiatives or activities that we need to do that constitute as level 2 priorities to close the gap of the current versus the future target of that metric. Now, they may or may not have enough time, energy, resources to close that gap. And so there's a negotiation of catchball that says, well, listen, you're saying we need to reduce order fulfillment time from 6 weeks to 4 weeks, but we need to invest in technology and we don't have that money, so we can only get it from 6 weeks to 4.5 weeks. And there's a negotiation on the targets and the level 2 priorities, and that cascades down to the level 3 and 4. And I know what I'm describing to you is a little bit difficult, maybe perhaps to understand how do you actually do that. This is exactly what we teach in our broader program. We can talk about that later. But the essence of what I'm trying to say here is conventional planning focuses on selection at the top, setting some bold objectives and measures, maybe certain strategies around it, and then saying go. And there's no real attention paid to how you translate down across a coordinated cross-functional manner. Different department or functional heads are left to create lists on what they believe that they can do to achieve those results. And sometimes we do work, obviously, in coordination with other departments and functional heads on what those initiatives are. But the coordination still doesn't end up focusing on the vital few versus the trivial many. And we use a process like identifying level 1, 2, 3, 4 priorities, etc., through a process called catchball. So that 3, 6, 9 months down the year, when you're focused on initiatives and someone has a new idea or initiative, the first thing you have to say is, well, is it linked to the Hoshin? Because if it's not, then you're going astray, right? And certainly we can adjust the Hoshin if the change is coming from the top, but everyone now is speaking a common language on, is it lined up to a level 2 priority, level 3, level 4? And what's really interesting here is when you create an action plan, the action plans that you are creating at a project management level that may have certain milestones and activities underneath those now can be considered level 4 or level 5 priorities. And everybody understands, even when you're having a weekly or bi-weekly meeting on a particular initiative and you're doing project management, they can see how when they slip on time 1 week, 3 weeks on a particular deliverable, that's a level 5 priority, and how it impacts the level 4, the level 3, 2, 1, all the way to the top. And the point of impact doesn't necessarily always need to be down to a level 4 or 5. It certainly can even be level 3 and 4. That depends on the size and maturity of the organization. So now I want to talk about, how do you actually document this? How do you actually look at the visualization of all of these linkages of priorities? And this is where I want to introduce to you one of the main tools called an X matrix. The X matrix, also the accountability matrix, is a very interesting format that's used to communicate the cascading objectives and accountabilities. And if I just zoom in just a little bit so you can see what's happening here, what you'll notice here is we have an X matrix here. And what you're doing here is you're reading this clockwise, and you started from the south position first, okay? So what are the 3-year 3 to 5 year strategic objective. This is an example that's quite dated, I know, but it's just to demonstrate to you how this works. And in this particular case, the sales team, I'll just pick one, wants to achieve $500 billion in revenue by the end of 2013. This was at that point in time, the year was probably 2008 or 9. How do they do that? Well, if you say we have a black dot, which shows a correlation to the annual objective, which is to achieve 290 billion this year. So sorry, this year is 2010. How are we going to achieve $290 billion, which is one step forward to the 500? Well, there are certain level 1 priorities, and you can see the black dots which correspond to them. Similarly, you have that similar clockwise pattern and reading going for these other breakthrough objectives, 2 separate annual objectives, which is the one step forward into the level 1 priorities. And if you read further towards from the north to the east position, you have specific improvement targets for each of those level 1 priorities and how you're going to make improvements from X to Y by a certain time horizon. And on the far right is, who is accountable? We have a black dot, and who is supporting, which is a clear dot. And I know that this is a very quick overview of what is an X matrix, but the X matrix is really unique because it shows the visible cascade of priorities from that same language that I was using with you earlier. 3 to 5 year objectives, annual objectives, level 1 priorities. And what is interesting is if you take this, let's suppose for a CEO or a president or the top leader of the division or an institution, this would be their top level matrix on who is accountable for what. So if the CEO owns this top level matrix, generally what you have noticed here are the executive leadership team, his or her direct reports will likely own accountability to achieve these level 1 priorities. Now, what's unique is that we have second level matrices, which is not shown here, for each of these leaders, which will have a similar matrix that starts in the south position, not at the 3 to 5 year horizon, but at the annual. And on the west position, they will have the level 1 priorities that they are accountable for only. So where they had black dots on this top level matrix. And in their north position, there will be level 2 priorities. And on the far right will be different leaders at the next level down that are accountable to achieve this. And what you do with this is basically it involves everyone in its co-creation. It makes sure that you're doing the right things. It aligns all your stakeholders and it gets you laser focused on the vital breakthrough aspirations. It focuses all your energy on the few crucial goals while providing a structured framework to ensure we check progress on how we're doing, which I'll get into as well. And so ultimately, a tool like this, the X matrix, it eliminates the non-value added or the waste in an organization that comes from miscommunication and misalignment and selection of too many priorities and objectives. So what does this look like, when you cascade? In an organization now at the top level, what you may end up having is, as I mentioned, and I'll zoom in for you, the most senior leader, in this case, it's a global supply chain division, has the top level matrix. And you can see the self position of improving certain breakthrough objectives from X to Y by a given time horizon. And on the west position is what is the annual objective X to Y we need. And in north position, it is what are the level 1 priorities, and followed by in the east position, the metrics to support each of those, the targets, as well as who is accountable. Now, each of these direct reports for that senior leader will also have their own cascading objectives. And as I mentioned, their X matrices do not start from the 3 to 5 year horizon. This entire thing rotates counterclockwise. And you start in the south position on the annual objective, which you see the red now is now moved into the south position, and we're cascading to a level 2 priority. And again, X to Y metrics targets and who's accountable at the next level. So this is a framework basically that allows you to cascade the vital few versus trivial many from 3 to 5 year annual to level 1 priorities, level 2 priorities, and beyond. That is following a catch-all process that's facilitated and structured to get everybody on clear alignment on who is accountable for what and how we're going to translate the what into the how, i.e. the strategy down to the tactics. But there are further tools that I want to quickly talk about because I'm just giving you a quick overview of this right now. So in addition to the top and second level matrices, and you could have more depending on how complex and large your organization is, when it comes to the review, what we do specifically here is for each of those leaders, this monthly KPI reviews happen. So there might be leaders at the point of impact now, suppose for level 2 or 3 priorities, and they need to focus on breakthrough. And we have for each leader a monthly review. So as an example, the top level matrix could be the president or the CEO. The second level matrix could be, I'll call it the vice presidents or executive leader. And then of course, in the second level matrix, you would have director levels or management levels who are accountable things on the level 2 priority. So that is how we cascade down. And when it comes to the monthly review process, what's unique here is, I'll just zoom in for a second. We use a tool called the Bowler chart. The first thing you'll notice is there's a top half and a bottom half, because we've distinguished between the breakthrough priorities on the new goals and ideas versus the daily management metrics, which are the business fundamentals and keep the lights on. Now, why are we doing that? We're doing that because we recognize that if you're not in control in your daily management metrics, you're always going to have struggle to work on the new goals and the new ideas. Another observation you'll see here is that there is red and green statuses. There is no yellow. Now, why are we doing that? We're doing that because the premise and background of Hoshin Kanri is to make problems visible. And so red is not bad. It just means that we have a problem and we need to fix it. And so if you have a sea of red in your bottom half of this Bowler chart, it represents that there's not stability and control in your daily operations, and you will struggle in the breakthrough priorities, which is why this framework distinguishes between both, and it allows us to focus on both for each functional leader across the business. Okay. And the other thing that we're going to talk about is, as I mentioned to you, these are different types of work. And so we have to treat them different. In the breakthroughs, we're focused on innovation. And what we want to do for the breakthroughs is we want to have different types of basically programmatic structured work breakdown structures, project management plans, action plans. If you think about it, like I said, there's milestones and there's actions in here. You can consider those as level 3 or level 4 priorities. Now, everybody who's working on this project team understands how their contributions align right back up to the strategy. Meanwhile, in the daily management metrics, if you're off target in red, we use tools like root cause corrective action. Now, this is one is a little bit more complex, but you'll notice here, there's a Pareto diagram on the top right of this diagram, and we're doing root cause problem solving and getting down to the root causes and the containment issues to drive the corrective actions. And so what, again, we're saying in this particular situation here is, we use the X matrices to create focus and alignment and translate the what into the how. Then we move into the execution and review, where we're distinguishing between the breakthroughs and the daily management metrics. And for breakthroughs, we're using action plans and programmatic structured meetings to move those forward. And for daily management metrics, or the daily operations, we're trying to maintain stability and control. And if there's a gap or you're red to a particular target, then we want to look at countermeasures, and we can do those through root cause corrective action. The one other thing that I wanted to quickly mention in here, though, is the distinction again between breakthroughs and daily management. What you'll notice here is the target versus actual, and we have a JOP, which stands for jump off point, just a fancy way to say baseline. And the target here is usually sloped from X to Y. In this case, we want to go for voice escalation not resolved in an SLA from 25 down to 12%, or in this case, 10% down to 5. Whereas in the daily management metric, you'll notice the monthly targets are actually flatline. We want to maintain 80% adherence to the schedules, or we want to maintain 85% adherence to this schedule here. Generally, we want to maintain 44.5 out of 5 stars review with our customer support. Generally, what we're trying to do here is maintain stability and control to a particular target. And when your actual is below the target or off target, we want to drive countermeasures because we're looking for stability and control, versus breakthroughs is we're really focused on delivery of the breakthrough priority and the objective. So when you take a look at this entire system now, and we really try to move it forward. This is exactly what's happening, and this is how we're using Hoshin Kanri to help organizations achieve breakthrough performance. The first thing is, if you look at performance, there's a particular standard of performance that you require. And if we deviate from that standard with the red line here, you'll recognize that we need problem solving, root cause problem solving, as I've just talked about through the countermeasure form. That is the daily management. If you want to make an incremental improvement and creating an improved target condition, we can derive continuous improvement. Kaizen is a Japanese word for continuous improvement. Perhaps you've heard of it. And there are different types of activities you can use to drive continuous improvement. But if you need breakthrough performance achievement, you need to really create an entirely new standard in terms of results. This is where Hoshin Kanri comes into play. And so if we consider the three stages of performance of daily management, continuous improvement, and strategic breakthroughs, in daily management, our goal is to maintain a particular standard. In continuous improvement, our goal is to improve the current target to a new target or standard. And in strategic breakthroughs, we're seeking step breakthrough, or step improvement, or radical change towards a new aspirational breakthrough target. And now what you can see is how we do this using different tools within our toolkit. So when you employ a system like this is how organizations achieve a sustainable competitive advantage. And the reason is because over the course of the years, particular breakthroughs, which might be breakthrough today, will end up being a business fundamental tomorrow. And as you start stacking up performance improvement with daily management, continuous improvement, and strategic breakthroughs, this is where you achieve the performance that you desire to get closer to the vision. And this is the system that allows you to help to do it. Again, if done correctly, today's breakthroughs become tomorrow's business fundamentals. And you keep building every year on top of this. So I'll summarize Hoshin Kanri before I move into how the world's best companies do this. And now, in summary, Hoshin Kanri really is, it's a process that ties the organization together with enterprise-wide improvement activities. It translates the vision into tangible priorities to achieve certain breakthroughs. We're able to create alignment through cross-functional planning or a catch-all process to achieve these short-term objectives. And we're looking for smart wedges, i.e. the vital few versus the trivial many initiatives to work on. And when you do this, the work is driven by the organization's vision and no longer by today's problems. So I want to now move into, well, this is great. I've given you a brief overview of Hoshin Kanri, and I recognize that there might be many more questions that you have. But from a high-level framework, I want to take the opportunity to talk about how does Hoshin compare to other strategy frameworks, ones that perhaps you are maybe more familiar with. First of all, when we look at Hoshin Kanri, in summary, I want to show you how it all fits together. It's the part of a complete strategy deployment and execution and review framework, and it follows the plan, do, check, act sequence. Time-proven PDC approach. It's fairly easy to understand once you get a sense of some of the main tools. And as you can see, we have X matrices for the planning, standard project plans and charters for the do phase, KPI charts for the check phase, and countermeasures for root cause analysis in the act. And when you implement a system like this, it's a complete comprehensive goal deployment and continuous improvement framework. Okay, so if this is what Hoshin Kanri looks like, and this is essentially how the main pieces fit together, the uniqueness, of course, as we've talked about, how does it compare to some of the other? Well, here's some. First off, very early on, we had MBO, which stands for Management by Objectives. Managed by Objectives came out by Peter Drucker, and it was basically saying, well, we need to basically have objective-based management, should measure things. And now I know OKRs, objectives, key results, is very, very popular, specifically in technology companies and startups, but it's actually been around for a very, very long time, since the 1970s, and that's very good as well. Then you have OGSM, which is Objectives, Goals, Strategies, Measures, and of course, Balanced Scorecard by Kaplan and Norton. And what you see on the far right is Hoshin Kanri. And if you can appreciate some of the attributes that we've talked about in terms of the executive leader's dilemma and how we overcome them, what you'll recognize is, there is value in being able to select the vital few versus the trivial many. There is value in having clear, visible cascade to drive communication and accountability on what matters most. You may understand as well that we need to have a system for managing non-execution, as well as an overall system that distinguishes between innovation and improvement and keeping the lights on. And what you see is when you stack some of these attributes together, Hoshin Kanri ends up coming out on top as a superior model for certain types of organizations that face this type of challenge. Now, you may ask, if Hoshin Kanri is so great, how come I haven't heard of it, or how come more companies aren't using it? Well, on the contrary, I would say there are many organizations used, but I would agree with you that many people have not heard of this. And one of the reasons might be is because it's called different things in different organizations. Not everyone will call it Hoshin Kanri. They create their own names for it, but it is something that requires a little bit more rigor and sophistication, and it doesn't really easily adapt into certain types of cultures. Some cultures and organizations have a difficult time getting people to fill out project charters and project plans, let alone follow a really rhythmic system to do the entire strategy planning, deployment, execution, and review. But what's interesting though is that there are many, many organizations that use Hoshin Kanri in some way, shape, or form. It might not be at the corporate level, but certainly in certain divisions. And as you can see, these are some of the many organizations that have been known to use Hoshin Kanri. Again, they might not call it Hoshin Kanri, and they may have adapted it to their particular use case. But it is a framework that's used widely across many organizations in different pockets. And while there's too many organizations to list that actually do leverage this framework, many are well known, some are not, and they apply to all types of industries and all different types of sectors. So yes, it's popular, but I would agree that not many people look at it. If you look at the vast ocean of different businesses across the globe, different sizes, different industries, different types of leaders, it turns out that majority don't know what this is or haven't heard of it. Unless you've been a part of an organization or been in a career where you've seen a variety of things, then you may have come across this, which is interesting because just why some people actually call it the best in class strategy execution framework that less than 1% business leaders know, but they use it as their secret weapon. The organizations that I've used Hoshin Kanri and introduced, it's funny, after 3, 6, 9 months, people say, I have no idea of any other better way to run the business. I don't know how we were doing things in the past. It's just like riding a bike. Once you get to understand more of the elements and the tools and the frameworks, then it starts to be much easier. And it is, as I say, like riding a bike. And make no mistake, this system helps you achieve a major competitive edge. So now that I've walked you through that, before I get into the best in class approach, I want you to take the opportunity to rank your organization's strategy management execution process again from 1 to 10 based on what you know. And you can also use this information here as rating levels. So please take the opportunity. I don't know if based on the new information that you've shared, if your number has stayed the same, maybe it has gone up, perhaps it has gone down, but it would be great to see, what some of those numbers might look like. And if you're actually getting into about a 7 or 8, where you're distinguishing between breakthroughs and fundamentals, or 9 and 10, that's fantastic. But generally, when most people do look at this, they start to see that perhaps their score may drop, or float somewhere again into 4 or 5, or potentially 6. So I want to keep it moving here. How do some of the world's best companies do it? And I'm going to try to pick up the pace a little bit here. The best companies recognize that they have to move away from traditional firefighting or diving and catching to achieve the goals. You have to recognize that continuous improvement, by everyone every day, is a prerequisite to achieve the white space to create new goals. And you need to leverage a best-in-class strategy execution framework to get total participation of everyone involved. And if you layer these 3 on, that's what helps. Now, traditionally, organizations operate in this diagram to the left. They're very focused on innovation only, and the top management are always focused on innovation, while the vast majority of the organization is focused on maintaining the business. The best-in-class approach is to focus on both improvement and innovation and have structured Kaizen. There's that word again. Kaizen is a Japanese word that means continuous improvement, because the best companies recognize that continuous improvement is what makes processes better, and it creates the white space in terms of time, energy, and money to enable the innovation. So that is a fundamental shift. It's not just about strategy, it's about continuous improvement and operations. And when you look at it, there's an entire complete system that many organizations employ to dedicate to this. Now, when you fully embrace and adopt this, here's an example. There's a company called Danaher. You're thinking, well, what can Hoshin really do? This is an interesting story in our case study of what a best-in-class Hoshin Kanri and business transformation model looks like. Danaher is a global diversified corporation. They're dedicated to some of the concepts that we've talked about. And what these companies do is basically it's a conglomerate, and they buy companies, transform them, and buy more. And when you look at other types of organizations and how they all perform relative to the Standard & Poor's Index, you can see a company like Danaher has outperformed. And this is what it means by creating a sustainable competitive advantage. They have outperformed their competitors by a whopping 2,600% since the early 1900s. Pardon me, 24,000%. And when you look at their main competitors on the right, I believe some of you may have heard of some of these organizations. And then you think, well, what do they have in common? Well, they're all large multinational corporations. They have diverse business interests, long histories, global reach, and prominence in their respective industries. But it's not just Danaher that embodied some of these principles, like Toyota. If you've heard of the success of Toyota, there's another interesting thing, and you look at certain other organizations that also have a repeatable pattern. It turns out these are ex-executives from Danaher that are now leading these organizations, employing Hoshin Kanri and similar principles and methodologies and frameworks. And they too, you can see, are basically crushing their competition. Like Danaher, they also have outperformed the competition and dominated within their industry. I'll give you one more example here before we move along. Everyone here hopefully has heard of the company General Electric. General Electric, for the first time in 2018, decided to find an outsider to become the CEO in its over 126-year history. This CEO, Larry, led Danaher from 2001 to 2014. GE recognized Larry Culp's ability to drive execution using these types of frameworks, and Larry Culp since then has been bringing Hoshin Kanri into GE. And that was in 2018. Let's take a look and see what has happened. As some of you might know, GE has divided into several different business units, health and aerospace and Vernova. But when you look at this particular GE aerospace stock over the last number of years, it has also outperformed. Now, I'm not saying Hoshin Kanri is the reason why these stocks are outperforming, but what I'm demonstrating and showing you is some of the best companies in their industries that are outperforming are using Hoshin Kanri to drive their business. And you can see on the diagram on the pictorial on the right, Hoshin Kanri is a part of their proprietary flight deck program, which helps them to drive their strategy and their execution. And all of this is to say basically that you do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. These and other world-class organizations have systems in place to drive strategy and execution. And that is exactly what we're trying to do here. And what I'm trying to articulate here is the bridge between strategy and execution is a framework for your strategy, a process for your strategy deployment and execution, a framework that might be Hoshin Kanri. And how you get from execution to results, or the path to success, is embodying continuous improvement within everyone in the organization through structured continuous improvement programs, implementing lean and Kaizen and other types of things. And when you do this in combination, like some of these organizations that I've just shown you, that is how you create a sustainable competitive advantage, and that is how you drive. Learning coming this fall. And it is an advanced certification in strategy and operations management that talks about some of these strategies and principles to teach you how you can help your team, division, your company, your institution go from blueprint to breakthrough strategy and results. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk more about when this program is later. You'll have more information. I'll give you an opportunity to where you can learn more. But it's essentially a 5-day intensive program to equip you with how to implement some of these frameworks and learn how to drive strategy and business transformation, achieve the strategic alignment, improved execution, accountability, enhanced decision making, and how you can enable your organization or team to create a sustainable competitive advantage. It is a certification program, so there are certain assignments that will make up 70% of the mark, and there's a 1-hour open book multiple choice exam that would make up 30%. And ultimately, as I mentioned before, innovation is valued, but execution is worship. And what we're trying to do is teach people more the best-in-class strategy execution framework that, again, probably less than 1% business leaders know, but those that do, they use it, and they use it as their strategic weapon. So this program, which will be coming out later on in the fall, more information to come, is exactly what you're going to learn in terms of how you can do this and build this capability for yourself to advance your career, as well as enable your institution or organization. Now, a variety of different folks will benefit from this program, whether you're a decision maker or in mid-level management, or you're a single contributor in an improvement professional. You can see a lot of different people would benefit. And what I want to do is now offer you the opportunity to scan the barcode if you'd like to get on the preferred waiting list. And I'll wrap this up now in just a few more slides. You will be offered a 20% early bird discount for this particular program if you sign up on this list before August 15th. We are still trying to find out a little bit more about the exact pricing and determine. And what we're going to do is we're going to give you the opportunity once we have that information. And you can see on the right-hand side, there's a couple of slides. We have achieved 5-star ratings on average, 4.9, I think it is, across a variety of different folks. Some people say it's one of the best courses they've ever seen in the working environment, and they love the program. I'll click forward again to the second page of testimonial. There's more here. People saying everyone in management should take this program. Great program, learn new insights. And I'll again move very quickly to the third and final slide here that has a few more testimonials that has more information from a lot of people who really went through the program and enjoyed it, well structured. Some people recommending all operational and business excellence professionals should attend. And so there you go. If you take the opportunity now, please, to go ahead and scan that barcode. It'll ask you for a little bit of information. And once you put that in, you'll be on our list. You will be eligible for the 20% discount. Once we do finalize pricing, timing, etc., you will be the first to know, and you will be able to take advantage of this particular program. And so with that, the last thing before we open it up to Q&A, and I do see that there are some questions in the chat, which I can get to as well, is that I'll leave you with, you can beat expectations with good execution of a mediocre strategy, but you can miss expectations with poor executions of a brilliant strategy. And it is good execution that is the critical determinant of results. And if you could solve the riddle of how to drive good execution with your team, with your organization, this knowledge will help you not only in your career now, but in years to come as you go on to greater things in terms of different types of challenges and responsibilities that you take. And I'm seeing now that in the chat, thank you so much. I'm having some questions. The time is up. I am going to open this floor up now to any questions. I see some people are saying, thank you so much. It's so kind. Someone is saying, Abdulaziz, that this is one of the best presentations that shows how to align strategy and continuous improvement. You want to know more? Great. We'll get you more. Folks, this will be recorded. The session is recorded, and we will make it available for you as well. If you'd like, you can always connect with myself on LinkedIn. I encourage you, if you don't already, please follow Hoshin Academy, the Hoshin Academy on LinkedIn. Please follow ES Learning. And with that, if there's any specific questions, I'll just look at the chat. Please go ahead and put them in there. And I want to thank you all for sticking with us for this time. We still have very good engagement here. Is it possible to share the presentation? As I mentioned, the recording will be available. If you specifically would like it, please do follow us on LinkedIn or connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll see what I can do in terms of providing you with some specific information. I'd be happy to do that. And I'm just checking to see, again, if there's any questions. I'll hold for another minute or two. Please use the chat. Okay. Well, thank you very, very much. I hope you have a good rest of the evening, and I hope that you learned a little bit more about an amazing framework that, yes, does offer certification. We do provide the certification for this. It's an advanced certificate in strategy operations management. It's a 5-day program with certification. And if you get on the list, you'll be the first to know about it later on in the fall, which is when we plan to have it, potentially September, mid to late September, maybe October, but that is yet to be determined. So thanks again so much, everybody. I wish you a wonderful evening and night, and we'll see you again. Please do connect with us on LinkedIn. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.